Joyful blessings. This is Kaylin Castell with more on the sky mysteries because, of course, as I love to share each time, we are informing the mysteries as much as they are informing us. Pluto is what we're going to be focusing on here today. And we're going to look at personal and collective experiences with Pluto, especially in Pluto cycles or when people have strong Pluto that they're dealing with in a lifelong sense. One of my favorite subjects since I'm one of those people. And in the personal sense, we're dying to who we think we are. And in the collective sense, we're culturally dying to be reborn. So we're going to look a little bit at what's happening with the US chart and the Pluto return that the US is currently in. But first, I would like to give the biggest, largest context of what's going on. So this is showing the constellations, the maiden, also known as Virgo, the scales, also known as Libra, the scorpion, also known as Scorpius, the archer, also known as Sagittarius, the sea goat, also known as Capricornus, and the water bear, also known as Aquarius. And as I've mentioned many times before, the reason we're using these alternate names, and we don't use the maiden, but the program that created this, that created the Starry Night program that I have calls it the maiden, we call it the priestess. And so what you see is this green line is the path that the planets are following, and the sun is here at the December solstice, and this is the 0 Capricorn point currently. And over 26,000 years, every time we have the winter solstice in the northern hemisphere, the summer solstice in the southern hemisphere, when the sun reaches 0 Capricorn, the sun will be in every single constellation across the sky over about 26,000 years. So, so this is the largest context of this is the galactic cross, or the plane of the solar system, or the planet, the path of the planets, the ecliptic, and the plane of the galaxy intersect, creating a cross in the sky. This is near the center of the galaxy, and a rebirth point. So we know that we're in a collective rebirth point, and that it's lasting at least from 1962 to 2034. That's a 72-year window. But if we looked at 72 years on either side of the exact point, then we'd be looking at 1926 to 2070. Either way, we're in this massive, amazing change now. And what's happening is Pluto, and you can see it's a kind of a bigger version of the planet Pluto here, but Pluto is in the late degrees of Capricorn at the time of this recording, and it's going to enter Aquarius in 2023. It'll be here somewhere in the seasonal sign of Aquarius, and won't enter the goatfish or Capricornus until 2028. So, so that's just to kind of give you a sense of where Pluto is in the sky in relationship to all the amazing things that are going on. Interestingly, Pluto was at the 0 Capricorn point back in 2008 when it first entered the sign, the seasonal sign of Capricorn, and crossed the December solstice point. So what we're going to look at is what's happening now. And I just I want to remind everybody, if you want to get more information about this, be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel, click on the notification bell so you'll get the latest videos when they're posted, because there's going to be a lot of cool stuff that I'm going to be putting together and sending out shortly. And also that one of my latest projects, along with Eric Roth, that we're doing My Star Alchemy. And if you want to check out the current class, you can go to mystaralchemy.com. So now what I want to come to is how we are in the first ever Pluto return to the USA natal chart. And it has begun. In fact, it started in April of this year. So when we go back to when the Declaration of Independence was signed back on July 4th of 1776, Pluto was in Capricorn. Literally, Pluto was in Capricorn the last time from 1762 to 1778. It was about 16 years. And when we declared ourselves a country was about 245 years ago, based on the time that this video is being recorded. And Pluto was at 27 Capricorn and 33 minutes. Now, there are 30 degrees to a sign and 60 minutes to a degree. So it's about halfway through the 27th degree. And Pluto returns happen about every 248 years. It's not always exactly precise, and the return can last for up to almost 2 years, which we'll see in the case of this US return. So Pluto came within less than a degree of the US Pluto in April of 2021, when it stationed retrograde at 2648. And it was just 45 minutes from being exact to the US natal Pluto. So that really began the Pluto return cycle. And then it's going to come back to 2753, October 10th of 2023. So we have quite a Pluto activation happening for the US. And we're going to talk about that some more in a moment, but here we want to just look at what Pluto cycles are about. And they really are about dying to a perception and or belief about life or ourselves that limits who we are, especially due to a fear of something, a fear of dying, a fear of being abandoned, a fear of not being good enough, whatever the fear may be. And it's also dying to a way of being that no longer serves. So perhaps we've been ultra controlling and wanting to make sure everything is just a certain way, and that's not really working anymore. Or dying to an identity that limits living from our true self. And this is one that's pretty much everyone has to go through at some point, because we've all been conditioned to an identity at some point in our lives, and then we have the opportunity to die to that aspect, and ultimately it's meant to empower us to be who we truly are. So when we think about Pluto, it's operating through chaos, powerlessness, and events beyond our control. So oftentimes there are things that no matter how much you try to fix it, no matter how much you try to make it be different than what it is, no matter how much you're trying to solve the situation or resolve whatever is going on, when you're in a Pluto cycle, there are times that is just not going to happen. And ultimately, you're being forced to face your shadow, face your deepest fears. So you're no longer limited or defined by whatever these fears might be. And we have, at least I know I grew up in a time when reward and punishment, good or bad, were very strongly, how do I want to say this? They were very strongly present in my childhood growing up. So if I did something wrong, I was harshly punished. A lot of kids growing up in the 60s, this was the case. And so we may have been conditioned with this idea that if we're good, we'll be rewarded, and if we're bad, we'll be punished. But that's irrelevant in a Pluto cycle. So being good won't get you out of having to let go of whatever it is that needs to die. So ultimately what Pluto's bringing about is transformation, whether we want it or not. Here is Kali standing upon Shiva, and she is helping with these death mysteries and allowing for our people to die to who they think they are so they can be reborn to who they truly are. As kind of a mantra for the Pluto. Now, Pluto gifts happen when we are finally able to surrender, let go. And oftentimes what I have found is the longer I resist the letting go part, the surrendering part, the more challenging the events become, until finally there's no other choice. It's just like you have to let go. So basically the gifts of Pluto then are about alchemy and transformation through death and rebirth. And if you think about the caterpillar becoming the butterfly, the caterpillar literally dissolves and dies, and that identity is no longer a part of what happens. And within the cocoon, within the cauldron of transformational change, the butterfly is formulated. And so what happens is, when we're in this place, we can discover the buried treasures within that are within us once the fear, the grief, the pain, the rage, the aggression, the jealousy, etc., has been embraced and transformed. And then that helps us reveal our greatest strengths and gifts. That is what Pluto cycles are here to do. So stripping away the false self, the dissolution of the caterpillar, to reveal the true empowered self being transformed into a butterfly, is a great way to think about what is happening to anyone or to a country or to a world that's in a Pluto cycle. So what's happening with the US Pluto is there are 3 exact passes in 2022. So February 19th of 2022 will be the first one. July 11th of 2022 will be the second one. And December 27th of 2022 will be the third one. And then again, October of 2023 will be the last, when it stations direct, but it goes on beyond 1 degree by January of 2024. So there's a lot of time for the US to go through this process of death and rebirth. And we can already see that it's begun. And then there's even a planetary process of this happening. The old structures, if we look at Pluto and Capricorn, the old structures of how we do government, how we do education, how we do healthcare, how we do economics, all of those things, we could say maybe those are the main 4 pillars of the world as we know it. And those are all in a process of being taken down, so something new can come in that will be more supportive, that will be more empowering, that will allow us to live in a way that is more aligned with what the earth needs at this time. And then interestingly, if we look at the US chart, natal Chiron, this is going, is around 20 degrees of Aries, and Chiron is going to pass this point in July of 2023, activating another year-long cycle, underworld cycle, an underworld initiation. And Chiron is similar to Pluto in turning our wounds into our medicine. So essentially, we really can't get out of this because we have both a Pluto return and a Chiron return kind of happening simultaneously. So if we think of a cultural or collective death and rebirth initiation for the United States, we could say it is about having to die to who it has been to be reborn to its original intent. And because obviously this country has been off track really from the get-go. It's like there was this high intention put into place, and then it's never really been lived up to. So the process of Pluto then is about penetrating deeply into the hidden lies and manipulation that has been going on for a couple hundred years, more than a couple hundred years, of manipulation for power and control. And so what Pluto's going to do is bring the shadow and our deepest fears along with that to light so they can be purified and transformed. That is the intention of any Pluto cycle, and it is often very uncomfortable, not an easy process to go through, and you have to go through it. You can't get out of it. It's not something you can bypass or just by being good enough or trying to be good enough, get out of it. So basically what we're experiencing is the exposing of the Capricorn shadow that has manifested in the United States, inherent in the structures of government, economics, education, healthcare, climate crisis, spiritual fundamentalism. And those are just a few, that's just to name a few. And these structures have been designed to control and manipulate and limit our freedom. So how are we going to get past that? How are we going to get to another place with that? So we could imagine that this cycle, this Pluto cycle, and then Chiron also coming along to join it, is about finally freeing the original intent as declared in the Declaration of Independence and the Preamble to the Constitution. So here is the Declaration of Independence. That is a high vibrational intention that was set on July 4th, 1776. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men, and I would say all people, are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, along with doing no harm. So you can pursue your happiness as long as you're not harming others. That's sort of implied. And then the preamble to the Constitution is we the people of the United States. And it doesn't say we the government or we the rulers or we the people that are the elite and in charge. It says we the people, meaning everyone. We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. Again, something that has not been lived up to, but is at a high vibrational intent. And if we were really going to look at this, we might even create it a little bit differently, but that's a pretty high vibrational essence. So what Pluto then is here to do, and Chiron as well, is look at what needs to die so that this intention can finally be fulfilled for the greater good of all. Now, in the work that I have done over many years of ceremonial magic, is that whenever you set an intent, everything in the way of that comes up to get cleared. It has to be transmuted and transformed so it's not no longer in the way. And we could say Pluto is about that. So Pluto as a teacher, guide, and initiator is always about empowerment, first through the alchemy of transforming shadow and fears, like we've already discussed. And so here's what we're doing. We're looking in the mirror, and what are we seeing looking back at us? Is it scary, or what is that about? And what are we needing to really face within ourselves? So these are some helpful Pluto questions that could be asked by anybody who is listening to this, if this is something that you feel you want to work with within your own reality. Because when we start to do this, we start to transform, we start to change, we start to become more empowered to be who we truly are. So, are you willing to surrender and face your deepest fears? Um, are you in denial of what scares you, blaming others rather than looking at what is really going on for you? And I think that we've probably all done that at times. I know that I have, and I'm really processing how to look at, okay, wait, so if it's scaring me, if it's something I'm afraid of, if there's something that's being done to me that I don't like, how am I a part of that? And how can I transform that? So these are the questions that we really want to be with to become the most empowered beings that we can be. And that's what Pluto really wants to bring us, is that empowerment. So are you experiencing events beyond your control that are bringing up fears that you didn't even know you had? Sometimes we have to let go of something that we've been attached to for a really long time. It might be a relationship, it might be an identity, it might be a kind of work that we're doing, it might be somewhere where we're living. It could be many different things, and then it brings up more fear. And then, but you cannot stop the process. It's like the caterpillar, once it's in the cocoon, cannot stop the process of dissolution, no matter how hard it tries. So, and the last question, well, one of the last questions, are you at the effect of addictions, expectations, limited perspectives that are holding you back from experiencing the magnificence of your true self? That is a great question. So these are all questions worth journaling around. And are you embracing what scares you, trusting that in doing so, you will ultimately be empowered in ways that you haven't yet imagined? So something that you can do is journal around these questions. I will put them in the show notes so you can have access to them more easily if that works for you. And I'm just imagining that by addressing these things and looking at these things, that helps to empower us to have a willingness to look at our own shadow, as well as to help transform the greater collective shadow.